First time, details of the hazards to be expected from radioactive fallout.
Good morning, madam. Would you please read this booklet and carry out the instructions carefully?
New York City is only a day away from the green inferno of the Amazon jungle.
Some films don't just disturb, they scar. These are documentaries so graphic, so unsettling, that governments tried to bury them, theaters refused to screen them, and audiences were left shaken for life. From real death on camera to chilling confessions of killers, here are 10 banned documentaries the world never wanted you to see. Faces of Death is one of those films that you hear about in whispers before you ever actually see it. Released in 1978, it claimed to be a documentary showing the realities of life and death around the world. But what people got was far worse. Instead of calm narration and balanced reporting, Faces of Death went straight for shock value. It showed autopsies being performed on real bodies, animals being slaughtered, and executions carried out in full detail. One of the most infamous scenes showed a group of people sitting around a table, smashing a monkey's head with a hammer before eating it. Viewers were horrified. Some fainted in theaters. Others walked out in disgust. But the movie still spread like wildfire, especially among teenagers who dared each other to watch it. Because of its content, it was banned in over 40 countries. Censors said it wasn't really a documentary, but more like a snuff compilation pretending to be educational. Critics hated it, but audiences kept searching for it. What's strange is that even though theaters pulled it from screens, pirated VHS tapes began circulating worldwide. That underground popularity gave Faces of Death a cult following. People wanted to see the movie that so many governments didn't want them to watch. Even today, it's remembered as one of the most disturbing banned documentaries ever created. If Faces of Death shocked audiences, Cannibal Holocaust terrified them. Released in 1980, it presented itself as a found footage documentary about a group of American filmmakers who vanished in the Amazon while investigating a cannibal tribe. What made it terrifying was the style. The shaky cameras, the raw jungle setting, and the brutal scenes made everything feel real. People genuinely thought they were watching the final moments of a crew who had been murdered and eaten. It was so convincing that Italian police actually arrested the director, Ruggero Deodato. They believed he had killed his actors on camera. To clear his name, Deodato had to bring the cast members into court alive and well. Even then, suspicion lingered because the violent scenes looked too real. The film also included scenes of real animal cruelty, which only added to the controversy. Countries around the world banned it, and at one point, it was prohibited in over 50 nations. Despite the bans, it became infamous. People described it as one of the most disturbing films ever made, blurring the line between reality and fiction in a way no one had ever done before. To this day, it sits in film history as both a work of genius and an act of horror. Decades later, another documentary shook the world in a completely different way. The Act of Killing, released in 2012, didn't just talk about genocide. It let the killers themselves reenact it. Director Joshua Oppenheimer traveled to Indonesia to interview members of the death squads responsible for the mass killings of the 1960s. Instead of hiding their crimes, the men were proud of what they had done. One killer, Anwar Congo, even demonstrated how he strangled people with a wire because he thought it was a cleaner method of killing. The film blurred the line between documentary and nightmare. The killers dressed up, staged elaborate scenes, and acted as if they were making a movie about their own crimes. Some of them smiled and laughed while describing acts of torture and murder. For Oppenheimer, it was traumatic. He admitted to collapsing from exhaustion and suffering from insomnia after filming. Watching the pride these men felt in their violence haunted him for years. Indonesia banned the movie, calling it a misleading portrayal of their history. But activists and educators quietly circulated it on DVDs and online, ensuring people still had access to it. The act of killing is remembered not just for what it revealed, but for the terrifying way it forced viewers to confront the reality of human cruelty. Before all of these, there was Titicut Follies, a black and white documentary that shocked America in 1967. Directed by Frederick Wiseman, it went inside Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane in Massachusetts. What he captured was horrifying. Patients weren't treated like people. They were mocked, humiliated, and neglected. Guards laughed at them, shouted at them, and treated them worse than prisoners. One unforgettable scene showed a patient being force-fed while a guard made cruel jokes in the background. Instead of being a place for healing, the hospital looked like a dungeon. The film exposed a system that didn't care about mental health, only about control and punishment. But just before the documentary was set for wider release, the Massachusetts government stepped in. Officials claimed the movie violated patient privacy and dignity. Many believe the real reason was that the film made the state look corrupt and abusive. In 1968, a judge banned the documentary, ordering all copies pulled from theaters. It became the first movie in U.S. history to be banned for reasons other than obscenity or national security. For over 20 years, people could only hear rumors about it. Finally, in 1991, the ban was lifted, but only with a disclaimer saying the hospital had improved since the film was made. The war game may not show gore or torture, but it terrified audiences in a different way. Created in 1965 by Peter Watkins for the BBC, it asked one chilling question: what would happen if a nuclear bomb hit Britain during the Cold War? The documentary simulated the aftermath with shocking realism. It showed homes reduced to ash, people suffering from burns and radiation sickness, and society breaking down as food shortages and panic spread. Watkins didn't hold back. He worked with scientists and officials to make sure every detail was accurate. The result was a film that looked less like fiction and more like an actual news report from the end of the world. When the BBC saw it, they panicked. Officials said it was too terrifying for the public. Later, declassified documents revealed the truth. The British government pressured the BBC to bury it because the film made them look unprepared and weak. Although it was banned from TV, the war game still screened at international festivals, even winning the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1967. It finally aired on British television in 1985, 2 decades after it was made. The war game proved that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what has happened, but what could happen. And for many years, it was the documentary the government didn't want anyone to see. The Cove is a documentary that plays out like a spy thriller, except everything in it is real. Released in 2009, it focused on the small town of Taiji in Japan, where thousands of dolphins were secretly being captured and slaughtered every year. The filmmakers knew that if they just walked in with cameras, they would never be allowed near the killing grounds. So they disguised themselves as tourists. At night, they snuck into the heavily guarded cove. Armed guards and fishermen patrolled the area, making it one of the riskiest filming projects ever attempted. To get footage, they hid cameras inside fake rocks. They used underwater microphones and thermal imaging equipment. They even had divers hang from cliffs in the dark, like spies in an action movie, just to capture the truth. The footage they recorded shocked the world. It showed dolphins herded into a small cove, trapped, and then brutally slaughtered. The water turned blood red as the animals cried out. Those that weren't killed were sold to aquariums and marine parks across the world. The meat from the dead dolphins was later found in markets, contaminated with dangerously high levels of mercury. When the film was finally released, it won awards and international praise. But in Japan, it was a different story. Screenings were canceled after protests. Theaters faced threats. Politicians and nationalists accused the filmmakers of being anti-Japanese and of insulting their traditions. Lawsuits were filed, and the government quietly pressured venues not to show it. The Cove was never officially banned, but in Japan it was almost impossible to watch. That made it one of the most controversial documentaries of the 2000s. The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco is one of the most famous landmarks in the world. But it's also known for something tragic. It is the most popular suicide spot on Earth. In 2006, filmmaker Eric Steele decided to capture this grim reality in a documentary called The Bridge. He and his team set up cameras for a full year, pointing directly at the bridge. They secretly recorded people walking to the edge and jumping. The footage was haunting. The film also interviewed friends and families of the victims, trying to understand why the bridge had become such a magnet for tragedy. But the way Steele went about, it sparked outrage. Families accused him of exploiting their loved ones' deaths. They said he tricked officials when applying for permits by not disclosing his real intentions. Critics argued that instead of preventing suicides, the documentary risked glorifying them. Some even feared it would inspire copycats. The bridge was banned from certain festivals and screenings. Some broadcasters refused to air it, calling it too disturbing and unethical. Still, it forced conversations about suicide prevention. After years of debate, safety nets were finally approved for the Golden Gate Bridge, a decision that might not have happened without this film. But the controversy never faded. To this day, The Bridge is remembered as one of the most unsettling documentaries ever released. Then there's Zoo, a documentary that many people wish they could unsee. Released in 2007, it explored the death of a man named Kenneth Pinion in Washington State. He died after engaging in activity with a horse. The subject alone was shocking, but what made it worse was how the documentary presented the story. Instead of condemning the act, some viewers felt it was trying to justify it. Interviews with people in the zoophile community suggested that this was just another form of love. Critics were horrified. They said the film wasn't objective at all. Instead, it seemed to defend something that was not only illegal, but deeply disturbing. Reviews described it as crossing the line from documenting a crime into excusing it. As expected, Zoo was banned or heavily restricted in several countries. The subject matter alone made it too controversial for mainstream distribution. Even in the US, screenings were limited to select film festivals, and many theaters refused to touch it. Zoo remains one of the most infamous examples of a too disturbing documentary, not because of gore or violence, but because of how it handled a subject that most people consider beyond the limits of human decency. Long before Faces of Death or Cannibal Holocaust, there was Mondo Can. Released in 1962, it was the first major shockumentary, a film designed to disgust its audience rather than educate it. The title translates from Italian as Dog's World, meant to suggest a harsh, cruel world where humans behave like animals. The filmmakers traveled around the globe, stitching together footage of bizarre rituals, grotesque practices, and scenes that shocked audiences who had never seen anything like it. There were ceremonies where women were fattened up before being offered as wives. funerals where money was burned so the dead could take it into the afterlife, parades with people carrying live snakes, and of course graphic scenes of animal cruelty. At the time, people didn't know what to make of it. Some critics accused the filmmakers of staging scenes to make them more shocking. Others argued they were exploiting the cultures they filmed, turning real traditions into freak shows for Western audiences. The backlash was huge. The UK banned it outright. Other countries followed. But despite the bans, Mondo Cane was a hit, and it inspired decades of similar Mondo films that tried to outdo each other in shock value. Even now, it's remembered as the blueprint for all shock documentaries, banned in its day, but legendary in its influence. Earthlings, released in 2005, has been called one of the most powerful animal rights documentaries ever made, and also one of the hardest to watch. Narrated by Joaquin Phoenix, it exposed humanity's exploitation of animals in almost every major industry. The film didn't rely on interviews or flashy editing. Instead, it used hidden cameras to capture what really happens inside slaughterhouses, fur farms, circuses, and research labs. The footage was raw, unfiltered, and deeply disturbing. Viewers saw cows being beaten and skinned for leather, pigs and chickens crammed into filthy cages, foxes and rabbits skinned alive for their fur, elephants whipped and electrocuted to perform tricks, monkeys strapped into devices for lab testing without anesthesia. It was horrifying, and many people couldn't sit through it. Some theaters refused to screen it. Major distributors stayed away, fearing backlash. Companies tied to animal industries tried to block it altogether. In several countries, it was censored or quietly banned. But the film found life online. It spread for free across the internet, reaching millions of viewers. Activists called it the vegan maker, saying almost everyone who watched it changed their lifestyle in some way. Joaquin Phoenix himself described it as the most important film he ever worked on. Earthlings proved that sometimes a banned film doesn't disappear. It only becomes more powerful.